What is going on, guys? My name's Liv and welcome to Chasing Flags. It's been a long time. We have a new name now. It's not True Genre Sports anymore because I'm only covering racing at this point. And today we're doing driver rankings. There we go. Beautiful. I'm going to give some disclaimers, okay? First, this is just my opinion, okay? Everybody has their own opinion on who's better than who, and they have their own sort of biases. I'm going to try my best not to be biased, but there is probably going to be some. I'm just going to be honest. The second thing is I'm going to try to rank them based on their performance, because obviously that's what most of these are. It's like, how well did they do in general this year? But I'm not looking at it in terms of, like, let's say, like, how they ended up in the driver rankings at the end of the year, like how they ended up in the standings. That's not how I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it a little bit deeper in terms of what were you able to accomplish in your car? Were you able to score points consistently? And if not, what was that about? Was that you? Was that your car? Was it just not having really anything go your way? It depends. The last thing that I want to touch on is it's not in a particular order. I think the only one that's in a particular order will probably be the first one that we do, and that's because they were just so dominant. Obviously, you guys are going to know who I'm probably going to rank first. That will be the only thing that is concrete. Everything else, kind of subjective. It's not really in order. Like, if I put people in a category, it's not who's first in that box and who's last, and that's how I think. I'm putting them all in that same category. They're kind of on, like, level playing field. Without further ado, because I already have a lot of editing to do for this intro, let's get into it. So, here's my list. Another level. I think I had something like this last year. Not even close. We already know who's going to be in that category. Then 2, we have champion material. So basically, this is like, I saw enough potential in driver performances this year that I think that in the future, if they had a car that was, let's say, better, they would be able to contend for championships. Then we have awesome and consistent. There's probably going to be a lot of guys that fall into that, and that's like, you did a pretty much all around good job. So then we have did what you could. That's pretty much exactly what it says. Like, it's just a driver that they had not such a great car compared to the others, and they just did the best that they could, and I can acknowledge that. Then we have one more chance. I have 2 ideas of who could go in there. I'm pretty sure, based on what I'm wearing, y'all can think of one person that's probably going to end up in there. You have an opportunity to do better somewhere else. Maybe they will get that, maybe they won't, but I think just one more time, just to try it out, that's what they deserve. And then we have the bottom category, which is your time is done. That's basically like bottom of the barrel, your time's over, you're going to get out. Sorry. Now, let's get to it. So, first up, I told you we were going to do them sooner rather than later. I think everybody could kind of guess who was going first, and that's going to be Max, because I don't really have much to say. I know a lot of people have strong feelings towards him, whether it's one way or another. I'm trying not to really think about that. I'm just trying to think about what were they able to do in their car on the track all year. He was just able to dominate the whole season. 15 wins. That's very impressive. New record, was able to win the championship in Suzuka. And pretty much how he started, where he DNF'd 2 times out of the first 3 races to come back and be able to take control of that championship and secure it, that is impressive. And yeah, I have to say, he was just super fast. Nobody could catch up to him, and that's all I'm going to say about it. So next we have Alex Albon. And the fact that Williams was able to score points this year, even though they were still last, that is a major improvement compared to last year. It was actually very cool to see the fact that every team was able to score points within like the first third of the season. Because that goes to show you that the regulations, while I'm not sure if they're great yet, they are definitely working in terms of getting cars closer to each other and getting new cars in the point scoring position. I think what Alex was able to do is he was able to take that Williams to places where really it hasn't seen. And he wasn't able to do it often, but he was able to do it enough. That I think that with what he was given, the fact that they're still the slowest car, but he was able to score points on a few occasions, I think that puts him in, did what you could. Like, he is pretty solid. And I would say he's a pretty solid guy. I know he made mistakes when he was at Red Bull, but I do think that he's a fast guy. And I think that his driving has kind of matured in a way. And for Alex, I think that he also made some mistakes where he would spin out or he would crash into other people. But I think that being more of a leader in that Williams team, I think if they could provide him with a good car, he could move up in these standings next year, and we'll just have to see. Next we have, I think that's Carlos. I'm going to put him in awesome and consistent. I'm not sure if he's champion material yet, and I love Carlos. I loved him since he was at McLaren. Sometimes I think about what would happen if he wouldn't have gone to Ferrari, but I think that maybe it was the best thing for him because he has been fast compared to where he's been in the years before. He wasn't on the level of Checo, wasn't on the level of Charles, not really, because he kind of fell off towards the end. But he did pick up his first win and his first pole. I think he got like 3 poles this year, that's exciting to see, and I'm very happy that, he's able to get closer to the front of the grid, especially compared to last year where it was pretty much just Mercedes and Red Bull on the front row all the time, on the podium all the time. The fact that he was able to get onto the podium pretty consistently, I would say that he did a great job. Solid driving. I think that a lot of, he had some DNFs, he had some mistakes, and that kind of also hinders him from going a little bit higher because he did end up going into the gravel quite a few times, and that ruined his race. Ended up crashing out in some races, and that ruined his race. And then had some issues, reliability issues within his Ferrari that really kind of hindered him from being able to fight with Charles and Checo a little bit more. So now we have Charles. Charles, I think, has champion material within him. Not only because he was just able to get second, but because looking at how the season started, he started off pretty strong, and I think it just went downhill. And not necessarily because of him. I would say that some of it is because of him. He did make some mistakes that were foolish. I think the one in France, probably the one that everybody will think of. There were just some days where he wasn't able to kind of, I would say, measure up to the expectations that I guess were put on with how he was doing at the beginning of the season versus now. And it was quickly kind of shifting in that championship where he was just taking a big points gap to Verstappen because of those mistakes. But I think that he was fast enough this year to show that if he is put in a good car, it's not to say that the Ferrari was a bad car. At some points it was faster than the Red Bull, but in the other tracks it wasn't. So I think if he gets a car that's consistently faster than the opposition, then he has a better opportunity to win races and potentially a championship. I think that with what he was able to do this year, it shows that he's getting closer and closer. And if Ferrari can figure out how they're going to manage their races, I would say that he has that within him to hopefully win a championship within the next few years. We just have to see. But I think he did a solid job, got a few wins, got a lot of poles, and it's crazy to see how many poles he got versus how many wins he got this year. I kind of feel bad. He was able to snatch P2 at Abu Dhabi, so that is impressive, and he got that little bonus, I think, for doing so I know he was pretty happy about that. But yeah, that is pretty much all I have to say about Charles. So now we have Checo. And Checo, it's weird because I want to put him in awesome and consistent because he is, but I also want to put him in champion material. My problem is I don't think that Red Bull is ever going to prioritize him to win a championship. Like, he would have to show them consistently that he could beat Max in Grand Prix in order to be more on that championship material, and I just don't think that will ever happen. Do I think that if he were the number one driver at Red Bull, he might have a chance of winning a championship? Yes. But what he has done in that car has been great. He has been faster and he finished higher than I think he did last year, which is very impressive. But I'm not really sure where. So I'm kind of like on the fence. I am gonna put him in awesome and consistent. I know he had that close battle with Leclerc for P2 towards the end of the season, but I think that compared to what his teammate has done in that car, he is just not as fast. Like, I feel like he should have been dominating P2, and it shouldn't have even been close. I think that he has been able to do a great job. He's a big reason why they won the Constructors' Championship this year, because he was just consistently faster than he was last year. But right now, he's just super awesome, and he's very consistent in what he is able to do. Then we have Daniel. And I'm going to put Daniel in one more chance because, well, this week we had all the news that he is signed as the third driver for Red Bull, which I think is kind of interesting how they phrase that. I think if he is ever given the opportunity again to get into an F1 car, maybe he'll be able to do a bit of a more consistent job. I am realistic in the fact that this year did not really go well for him, especially as a fan of his. It was tough to watch, but I have to think about things in sort of a full view of it. A lot of people see where a driver starts and where a driver ends, and they don't really look at the in between. Daniel didn't really do well, but first, let's talk about why. So the first thing is, I would say that he wasn't able to extract as much as that car. I completely understand that. He had some races where he was just slow. Towards the end of the season, I could see that he was getting faster and more comfortable, but he made some mistakes. Especially, I think in Brazil, he made that mistake with Magnussen, had that contact, put them both out of the race when he could have had a very good opportunity to score points in that race. I think that he wasn't able to do that well. I think part of it might have to do with just how he feels. So not only is it just his performance on track, but kind of just that mental state. And that's kind of something that he's talked about as well, of just not really feeling well and like having all of that weigh down on him. I think that had something to probably do with it, because it's got to be hard. And I would say that for any of these drivers, it has to be hard to have not the results that you want and have to deal with that, especially if your teammate is having better results than you are. I know he's taking this gap year, so hopefully he is able to get another chance, and maybe he'll be faster because he doesn't have all that pressure on his shoulders, and he's able to thrive in I guess a different environment. I think he only scored like 30 something points, which isn't a lot. He did get 11th, but he didn't even get into the top 10, so I can admit it was not a good season. I don't think he really fit in well with the McLaren team, and I'm actually going to do some season reviews. So I'm going to do just a standard review of the entire season, and I'm also going to do a review as a McLaren fan of how I think, and I'll go a little bit deeper into the whole Daniel stuff in that review. But yeah, I think that a lot of it had to do with him not performing, him not really just being in it mentally, and then he did have some issues with the car itself. Like, I don't think the car fit his style, which is okay. They tried to I guess, work with him and try to make it more to his style, but I just don't think it ended up working out. He had some issues with his brakes that kind of followed him around through the season, and had other issues where, like, cooling issues, where he would have to, like, slow down and pace in certain races, so, like, it seemed like he's fast. I think Canada was one of them, where they told him to, like, slow his pace, because if he didn't, he was going to have some issues with the car. And yeah, I think that kind of just wasn't a good fit. So I think that he's not a bad driver. I don't think that somebody could just be a good driver like 2 years ago and then just not be a good driver anymore. I think he has what it takes to get within, like, the midfield drivers again. I just think that it has to be somewhere else. So he needs one more chance. And if that doesn't work out for him, wherever he ends up in 2024, if he does end up on the grid in 2024, that has to be that year to show what he's made of, or else I don't see him within the sport in the future. And that's kind of sad to say, because I love Daniel. I would love to see him come back and be on the grid consistently, but it just is how you roll the dice. So you got to see what happens. Then we have, I think that's Esteban Ocon. And I'm going to put him in awesome and consistent. A lot of people didn't really talk about Esteban that much this year, and he was underratedly good. You know, he and Fernando were the big reasons why Alpine was able to beat McLaren in the constructors. You know, just consistently faster than us, getting strong positions within the midfield fight. And I think he beat Alonso this year. So, you know, gotta give him props for that. He did really well in that Alpine, and it's going to be interesting to see how he does next year with Pierre Gasly and that Alpine across from him. But yeah, I think he was a solid guy this year. Very underrated, but very good performance from him. So then we have Fernando, and Fernando's kind of weird, right? I could put him kind of in between these two, but I have to put him on consistent, because I think when the Alpine was working well, he was consistently in those points, just like Esteban. You know, I think that a big reason why we were lucky enough to have a closer fight with the Alpines than it should have been was because of the reliability, and that affected, I think, both of them, but especially Fernando Alonso. And it would be interesting to see how the two would have ended up in the standings had Fernando Alonso not had so many DNFs, or Esteban Ocon had any issues, if they were more reliable, where they would have ended up. But I have to put them kind of on that same level, because they were able to do similar things in that Alpine, and they were just very quick, very consistent in those points. And yeah, I have to give them their due diligence and their props for that. So then we have George Russell, and I'm going to put George Russell in champion material. I know it's kind of a little soon to think that, but he did beat Lewis Hamilton in the same car in his first season at Mercedes. That is crazy to even think about. That is crazy. What else do I have to give him props for? Just being pretty fast. Him and Lewis kept the Mercedes within that fight for P2 and the constructors. I think that he was consistently good. You know, you could see from the beginning, he, I think, was in the top 5 pretty much until Silverstone. I think that was where, when he DNF'd, he broke that streak, but he was just fast. Super fast. He did what he could in that Mercedes. He got a win. He was the only Mercedes driver out of the two to get a win this year. And I think that all around, I think if the Mercedes gets as fast as it's looking like it's going to get, he probably could contend with Charles and Max if their cars are all kind of on the same level going into the next few years for a championship. And that makes me excited to think about, because you could see it when he was at Williams, you could see it when he drove for Mercedes, and I think it was Bahrain a couple years ago, that you put him in a Mercedes, he might be able to do great things with that. He proved that he is able to do great things with that, and I think that he will eventually be able to fight, hopefully, for wins and championships and stuff like that. If this year has anything to go, I think he can only go up. So yeah, congrats to him. Won the sprint race, won the actual race in Brazil. So beautiful, beautiful job. Then we have Nicholas Latifi. And I like Nicky as a person, but as a driver, we all knew who was going to end up on this bottom row. And it had to be Nicholas Latifi. And I'm sorry, but when he did score points, so I had to give him that. He did score points this year. But compared to Alex, he did not score points enough. He only did it one time. Nicky just, over the last 3 years, just hasn't been as fast as his teammate, has constantly been a back marker, has constantly been last place in most races. And yeah, I don't think it's a surprise to anybody. I wish he was faster. Because he's a pretty cool guy, but you just gotta beat your teammate. You gotta prove that you're fast. If Alex is getting, P13 in a Williams, and you can't even get anything less than like P8 P20 or P19 or whatever after other people DNF or whatever. It's sad to see, because I don't really know. I'm not really sure how he would do in a different team, in a different sport. Like, I'm not really sure. But I know that what he was able to do in F1 in Williams, it was kind of like coming towards that moment where he basically wasn't going to be on the team anymore. And it's sad to see, but it just is what happens. So next we have Kevin Magnussen. And I would want to put Kevin in awesome inconsistent, but the consistency wasn't there. Right? He was pretty awesome this year. I gotta give him props. So I'll give him props for Bahrain. You know, being able to score, I think it was P5, I think. It was either P5 or P6. On his first outing back with Haas, when the Haas looked pretty feisty and pretty fast, you know, gotta give him props. He got pole position in, I think it was Brazil. And yes, that had to do with the rain and the George Russell mistake. But you have to acknowledge that a lot of the times, qualifying comes down to, were you at the right place at the right time? And Kevin Magnussen was the fastest person at that moment to set that lap, so he deserved that pole position for sure. And the fact that he was able to put that Haas on pole, however weird the situation was, that is a miracle. That is pretty good. But I gotta put you in did what you could, because that Haas, it started off pretty fast, and then as the season went on, like, it looked like they could fight for like P5, P6, etc. And then it kind of just diminished, and it kept going down and down and down and down and down. And yeah, I think that car started off strong, but it didn't work out. And so he wasn't able to have that consistency within the points, but he did get a lot of points scoring positions this year. So I would say that comparative to last year, and how that Haas team was, he did what he was able to do in this year's car, and he capitalized on the most important moments. So next we have Lance Stroll. I guess I could put him in did what you could, but compared to Sebastian, wasn't really that fast. But he wasn't terrible. Like, I think that on the days where the Aston Martin was really working and they were both able to get into the points, he did a pretty decent job. I just think that Aston Martin needs to get fixed over the off season and see where they could potentially extract the best out of that car, especially now that they're going to have Fernando Alonso, and then see where Stroll can end up compared to him. But yeah, he kind of did what he could with that Aston Martin, kind of like the bare minimum. So I don't really know where to put him. I'm just going to put him here. So then we have Lando, and it's hard because a part of me wants to put him in here, right? Because I think he has what it takes to be a champion if that McLaren could be fast. But I did say that I would try my best not to be biased. So instead, I will put him in awesome inconsistent. I think with Lando, he was obviously the best of the rest. I know he hates being called that, but compared to the other 6 drivers, you know, he couldn't get close enough to them with what he had. But he was able to consistently get points, even if it was only P7 or P8. Was able to get into the points in most of his races. I only think a few times he really didn't have that opportunity or didn't have the pace, like Bahrain. That one was a shocker to see, because normally, you know, I feel like they're both pretty quick. You know, to be able to capture P7 and really be the main force behind McLaren being in that P4 battle with the Alpines, I would say that, yeah, pretty awesome, pretty consistent, and it'll be exciting to see what he's able to do, especially what he's able to do against Oscar Piastri next year. I think he has what it takes to be a champion, but that car was not there, and, you know, his performances were amazing. I would say he's the only driver to score a podium this year that wasn't in the top 6. You gotta give him his props for that. He is able to drive the car well in the worst of conditions, such as the rain and Imola, and that's where he got his podium. He's very talented, so I think that if McLaren can give him the right car, oh, I'm going to be so excited. So then we have Lewis Hamilton, and obviously I'm going to put Lewis up here. I know some people are be like, so you're going to put Lewis up there, but you're not going to put Checo up there. Here's the thing. He's already a champion, alright? That Mercedes is consistently getting faster. And when that Mercedes is fast, Lewis has proven that he is faster than a lot of the people. So I think that if, let's say, Mercedes has the best car next year, he is champion material to win his 8th. Alright, I could be realistic on that. Will a lot of people like to see it? Probably. There's going to be a lot of people that would love to see him win another championship, and a lot of people that don't. I'm kind of like indifferent, because I'm not really a Hamilton fan, but I'm not a Hamilton hater either. I think he's a pretty cool guy, but I don't know. Obviously not my team, so I don't really root for him, but I don't root against him either. Like, if he does something pretty cool, I'm like, cool, that's awesome. This year, especially towards the second half of the season, he was able to fight closer to George, I would say. Because in the first half of the season, it seemed like George was quicker, and then the second half, it felt like Lewis was quicker. I do think that comparative to Checo did a lot in that Red Bull, and yes, he was faster. But I don't think that he will have what it takes to win a championship against Max, so that's why I put him in awesome. I think that Lewis, if his car is fast, has what it takes to beat Max, and I think this year he did a solid job. Like him and George, as I said when I was talking about George, they're both the reason that they were in that fight for P2 in the constructors. You have to be fast for that, and compared to how that Mercedes was so slow compared to the competition at the beginning of the season versus now, they really closed up that gap. And yeah, they weren't able to win, and he did DNF in Abu Dhabi, but still did a pretty solid job. And I think that with how things look like they're going, he's got that chance to win that 8th. Next we have Mick. Mick is also going in one more chance, and here's my reasoning behind it. I think Mick is a good driver. I think Mick is a good driver if he's in a better car. I think it was a little unfair for Haas to boot him after his second season, when I feel like last year didn't really count. I think this year was really his first full season where he was able to compete in some aspect or another. I think because last year they didn't do any upgrades, they didn't do anything with the car, so him and Mazepin were just always in the back because really there wasn't much that they could do about it. So I would say that if Mick is given a better car, I think he could do good things. Like, I think that he should promise this year. I know that him crashing out a lot was expensive for Haas, and that's probably a main reason why they ended up getting rid of him for Hülkenberg, because Hülkenberg is more, I guess, reliable. He's got more experience. That's what they said that they were looking for. Though it doesn't really make too much sense to me, because I feel like when you want to build someone up when they're young and they have more pace and they have chances to be in their prime than getting someone that's old. He scored points, Silverstone, I think Austria. I can't remember every single place he scored points. I know he didn't score as much as Kevin, but I think that if that Haas car was a bit better, and if he didn't make the mistakes that he did in terms of crashing out and crashing into others, thinking like, let's say Jeddah, I don't even think he was able to start that race, if that's the right one that I'm thinking of. He wasn't even able to start that race because of how badly his car was damaged. And then Miami, I think he crashed into Seb when it looked like he was going to be able to score his points there. But yeah, I think that if he's given the chance to go into a new environment and a new team, he might have the opportunity to score points and maybe get himself into the midfield. And I just hope that he gets one more chance in the future to prove that what's happening with Haas was a fluke, because really this was his first season. I don't count last season. You spend no money and you spend no upgrades because you're going all out in this season, and then he gets into this season and the car is like so. Like, you can't really judge him too much on that. because you just don't have the tools to do your best. But yeah, we'll just have to see what happens to him in the future, and if he can benefit from that. So then we have Hulkenberg. Now, when I was thinking about this tier list, like making this tier list and everything, this was before all the Hulkenberg news came out. So I would have said, man, your time is done. Because in that Aston Martin, when he took over for Seb Vettel, he was slow. It wasn't that quick. So I would say that maybe it's the Aston Martin not being that quick. Don't really know if it was the Aston Martin not being quick at the beginning of the season, or if it was just him not being fast. So I would have said your time is done, but he already got his one more chance. So, you know what? We are going to make another tier list. And I'm going to say, I'm just going to put Hulkenberg, because I really don't know what to name it. Thus, we're gonna add a row above, and we're just going to call it Hulkenberg. I'm sorry if this is oh, I hope I didn't spell his name wrong. I think I spelled it right. But yeah, so Hulkenberg, alright? He's gonna be in his own list because I don't really know where to put him. He's on the team next year for Haas, so it'll be interesting to see how well he's gonna excel in that team. Because if Kevin can come back and do an okay job, maybe he could come back and do an okay job. It's gonna be a funny pairing based on what happened a couple years ago with them. Then we have our second person that came in. Alright, Nick DeVries. And Nick DeVries came in for Alex Albon, who had to get surgery on his appendix. I think he had to get his appendix removed. And so he took over for him at Monza, and everybody knows what happens. And I think that we're going to put him right here in Did What You Could, because it's kind of like the same thing. Yes, he and Nicholas Latifi, I think, scored the same amount of points. However, I think the fact that he was able to just come in out of nowhere and just be able to score points means that he is a little bit better than Nicholas, because it took Nicholas so long to get those points, and he was just able to come in and do that. And yes, the Williams was pretty quick in Monza, and it was a little bit of luck with the safety car for Daniel Ricciardo at the end of the race and all that sort of stuff, but still gotta give him what he deserves. Did score points on his first official F1 outing. He's going to have that seat with AlphaTauri next year, and that's going to be fun, because I hope that him and Yuki can get back into the midfield fight where AlphaTauri used to be. That was fun times. I think that he's a little bit higher than Nicholas. I think he's less than Alex because, well, he didn't really have enough races to really see where he would have been next to Alex Albon in terms of the standings. He was only given one opportunity, but I think with that one opportunity that he was able to get, he did what he was able to do, and he just crushed it. Crushed his first outing. So yeah. So next we have Pierre Gasly. Okay, we're back. Alright, my recording cut out a bit during the Pierre Gasly stuff, so I'm gonna try to rethink my thoughts, okay, on Pierre Gasly. So, what was I saying last time around? I think I said something about how, basically, that AlphaTauri is way worse than they were last year, and their car is way worse than they were last year, but I think that him and Yuki had difficulties with that AlphaTauri. So I think they did the best of what they could with what they had. And thus, really, there's nothing else to say. Like, I think that they were both just not great this year. You know what, let's just put Yuki here too, because I think that at some points they were fast, but I think it was a combination of mistakes, reliability, just being a slower car compared to the other teams in the midfield. I think they finished, was it P8 or P9? I don't remember, but I don't think they finished as high up as they wanted to. Hopefully that all that stuff that goes on in Alpine next year, he's able to show that he's still got it. And Yuki, hopefully the AlphaTauri is fast so that him and Nick will be able to score points and put themselves back into the midfield. I don't really know what to say. Maybe I can make another tier I'm sorry, guys. I thought I had them all, but I'm gonna say it. You know what? We're just gonna put okay, and I guess that's kind of like what Did What You Could was about. I'm not really sure. AlphaTauri scored more points than Williams, but I think I'm still gonna leave Alex Albon and Did What You Could. Nothing against AlphaTauri. It's just it didn't really seem like they had a fast car this year. But at least they weren't last. Then we have four-time world champion, recent retiree. I'm really gonna miss him, Sebastian Vettel. Now I'm gonna put him in awesome. I could say that he could fall within awesome and Did What You Could. So that's where my verdict kind of lies. I am gonna put him in awesome just because of how he's been as a person and the fact that he was able to miss 2 races and still finish 12th, almost 11th in that championship, which I know, like, wow, 11th and 12th, that's so high. No, I get it, it's not that impressive, but I think with what he was able to do in that Aston Martin, that's why he kind of lies in between these two, because he's just such a good person. I know how fast he is, especially with how fast he was last year in that Aston Martin, getting 2 podiums, but 1 because he got disqualified out of a race. I know how fast he can be in a good car, and I don't think that he was in the best car, but I think he still did better than Lance in that car. And it was really cool to see just how much fun I think he had towards the end of the season, how much faster Aston Martin was getting. And I think that when he had the opportunity to capitalize, he was able to do so, and that was pretty cool. And also when he was leading that race for the whole few laps that he did, I forget where it was. I think it was Austin where it happened. I think it was Austin. But yeah, able to lead a few laps before being easily overtaken and then having, I think, a bad pit stop. I think he's been a pretty solid guy. And I'm gonna miss him, so that's kind of also a little bit of bias coming out. That's also why I put him in awesome, because I really don't want to rank him anything less than. Then we have Valtteri Bottas, and where am I gonna put him? Probably on the same level as Sebastian Vettel, mostly because, Alfa Romeo was able to finish higher than Aston Martin in the standings, but they were tied. But I think it was because he finished pretty high in one of the races. That's why they were able to beat out Aston Martin for P6, I believe, in the championship. Look, I think that the same thing that's happened with that Haas happened with Alfa Romeo, because that looked really fast. And maybe it's just all the Ferrari-powered engines. As much as that sucks to say, they all started out pretty fast in the beginning, and then as it went on, much slower. So I would say that with Valtteri, it's kind of like the same thing. He was able to do pretty good things, especially at the beginning of the season in that Alfa Romeo. So I want to put him in awesome. Maybe I should put him in Did What You Could. But I like Valtteri. I think of that Alfa Romeo gets faster, with how it's looking like it might end up getting faster and being in that midfield battle. I think that he will definitely be able to score more points because he's got a lot of experience and he's pretty damn solid at driving. Maybe I'll move him to Did What You Could. He's kind of like the same as like Sebastian, where he like falls into kind of like both of these, and that's because I'm a little bit biased. I like them a lot. What can I say? But you know what? I'm gonna move him to Did What You Could because he was able to do what he was able to do in that Alfa Romeo, especially at the beginning of the season. He took advantage of when they had good positions and was able to score points, and I'm pretty proud of him. I think he finished within the top 10, but I don't remember. I'm gonna have to look at the standings, and you'll probably see it edited on the screen if I'm right or if I'm wrong, where he ended up finishing. Last but not least, we're ending on a good note. He was the only rookie of the year, and I think that he did this, basically the same amount that Well, I would say he scored, I think he scored less points than Valtteri, but he was still pretty good for a rookie. His first year, he was able to score points on his debut, which was pretty interesting to see. And I think he's showing some promise, and he was fast at certain moments, and I think that he deserves it. Now, this is kind of a weird looking tier list. You know, I'm sure everybody could think of rating it and ranking it differently. You know, I think that a lot of the guys, I did say they were kind of gonna end up being in the middle of the road with how I view things, because I think that in terms of like what a lot of people were able to do in their cars, they did solid. I would say there were only some people that just weren't able to do the best in their car, and I would say it's in these categories that, you know, that's where that lies. This is just how I feel viewing the season. And compared to last season, I think that in terms of the midfield battle, it was a lot tighter than it was last year. But I will say, I feel like last year there was more opportunity for teams to have, like, I would say, like, shock podiums and like shock points in like higher positions. Like, a lot of these guys were just fighting for like P7, P8, P9, P10, and only when they got like really like lucky, whether it was DNFs or just having that good strategy as well to put them in positions higher than P7, those were when they came out to play, and they showed like some of the things that they could do in those cars. So when you have like a good like 8, maybe close to 10 people, maybe more than that can only finish within like the last 4 places on the grid, that's what's kind of tough. I should say the last 4 point scoring positions on the grid. It's kind of tough to rank them, because then you have to rank on, well, did they finish higher than others consistently? Blah blah blah. What were they able to do in their car? And it's just a little bit tougher because they all seemed like they were in that same range, which is why a lot of them ended up in the middle. So this is my ranking. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of people that have different opinions, and I really do want to see what you guys will rank it. So again, it will be in the link below down in the description. I would love it if you guys could tweet it at me at True Genre Sports or at Chasing Flags. Tweet it at me. I will look at them. Tell me what your thoughts are. You know, if you're gonna comment down below, I would love to hear in the comments as well what you guys think about my list, about what you feel like some of the drivers have done. Just be respectful. That's the only thing I ask. Next up, we'll be ranking every Grand Prix. Then I should be working on the season review and also the McLaren review. And I did get F1 Manager, so during Christmas break, I'm going to be playing that. So if you guys want to see some more F1 content over the holidays, then be sure to subscribe, because I will be bringing that. If you want to check out the last tier list I did, it's going to be somewhere on this screen. Actually, give me 1 second. Hold on. It's going to be somewhere on this screen in the outro. Just take care, guys. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy your holiday break or whatever you're doing at this point when you're watching it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.